Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject, how to contact your ancestors. As Natural Born Talents continues, I'm beginning to meet more and more people who are waking up spiritually. They seem to be very close to their ancestors. They are on a path where they're finding, like what most indigos understand, that the matrix really is full of a lot of BS, and it doesn't work for them. I wanted to make this video a long time ago, but my ancestors pulled me back until we saw a few more things within the matrix shift closer to the transition. The main reason for this is that there is so much insanity going on. I could have easily misled my listeners into something they probably didn't want to get into. I have seen many spirits go south that shouldn't have and are playing God over other people's lives, all playing with the narcissistic egos of the angels. This included even some of my own ancestors. For each individual, there are differences, but the general pattern or path is very similar. So I'd like to share that with you in the hopes of my listeners who wish to contact their ancestors see what they need to do in order to improve that technique. Now, of course, there are several key things that each individual will need to do in order to see or get closer or feel or understand that their ancestors are close and are communicating with you in one form or another. The matrix is full of beings who manipulate people one way or another through the game of cults, and this is why it's tricky. There are also very bad ancestors who will misuse information like this against you. Now, of course, the first thing you have to clear is ego. If you see the matrix for what it is, you shouldn't have too much a problem with this. Everybody on this planet, I don't care who you are, has some degree of ego in them, and that's okay. It's the misuse of ego, like you see in politics, that will corrupt you. So you can't live in denial. If you live in denial, you will not see the matrix as it is, but only as something for you to use against other people. And that's what ego is all about. And again, I'll say this over and over again. What is ego? Well, take a look at a lot of the fallen angels, bad ancestors, the moralistic angels, any of those. That's all ego. And ego is the opposite of love. So anything in your life that isn't about love, it's about ego, or at least connected to it. So having said that, what about prayer, meditation, or these other techniques that have been used for thousands of years? Nothing's wrong with those techniques. That's not the problem. You'll get information. The problem is, what information are you getting and who is it coming from? In other videos, I explain how ego works, what kind of personalities you can expect from ego. And generally, it's those that are holier than thou, I'm above it, I deserve a privileged life, you don't, what is okay for me is not for thee, etc., etc. Now, again, those people are damned, so they all fall into the category of the baby soul. They are not going to be contacting anything but the inferno in some point in time. But what about the rest of humanity that want to move on from this game, who want to grow spiritually in all kinds of ways? Some of the ancestors that I've contacted have been the American Indian ancestors, some of the African ancestors, the Hawaiian ancestors, the Shinto, Okinawa, and all of them have very different cultures and practices which are extremely beautiful. And it's all being torn up by politics. The anti-spiritual movement on the planet at this time is trying to destroy culture, history, etc., etc. Now, if you're connected to any of these people or of this kind of thinking, well, you're not going to get close to your ancestors. All of the ancestors that I have made some sort of contact with find this behavior extremely disgusting and vulgar. But they don't really care because they know that really doesn't have anything to do with them. The angels are very good at taking a tiny bit of the truth and manipulating it for their purpose. But again, that's part of the struggle of this world at this time. So what does that mean for the individual that wants to contact their ancestors? Now this takes time and you have to be patient. Plus, you have to be very, very wary of your surroundings pretty much 24/7. And what I mean by that is, if let's say you get up in the morning, you turn on the radio, and there's a song that is playing that hooks some sort of emotion in you, that was a time that you felt like you were spiritually moving forward, having a good time, related to a relationship or something, that probably means that there's somebody in your psyche trying to tell you something about that moment that's more important than you may have thought it had been, or may have some other meaning. The point is that ancestors as well as good angels are giving you hints all the time. It's just if you're aware of them or not. Ancestors often don't want to talk to you directly because that will interfere with your spiritual growth within the matrix, which is very important. However, since the matrix is getting so crazy and so insane that it's impossible to even see those little hints, ancestors have become very frustrated with the angels and the devil and the other things running the matrix at this time. They know that a lot of their loved ones are being abused within the matrix. They came in with the matrix for a specific purpose, and that has been denied by some baby soul somewhere. And it's extremely frustrating. Now, when the transition does come along, whenever that happens, the angels, the dark beings, the baby souls, all of them have to leave. And as I've said in many other videos, spiritual growth is done very differently. Everybody shares their spiritual techniques with one another. It's a fascinating world. There's no more darkness. There's no more struggling. There's just spiritual growth in all kinds of random directions. Nothing linear anymore. Okay, so to recap, what you can do is, of course, try whatever technique you've been trying, meditating, martial arts, walk through nature, and see if you can pick up the hints from your ancestors. Of course, understanding your background, where your parents came from, where your grandparents came from. These kinds of things will also help, but I suspect that your ancestors will guide you to look into those things more if they feel that you're getting closer to their way of thinking, their way of living, and their way of spiritually growing. The matrix as it is now is very controlling over people's lives, and because the baby souls are being pulled into the inferno, they're using technology to try to control people even more than they have in the past. This, of course, will only create what you see in the movie The Matrix, and eventually will collapse and destroy everything. However, for the past 20 years or more and more indigo souls, Heoka empaths, people who are a little bit asleep now but are beginning to wake up, are on the rise. People who used to play with ego are now moving away from it. And these are the things you need to look for in order to contact your ancestors even more. Because if you're stuck with ego, or you're stuck within the game, like you're a sycophant to ego, or one of these political causes, for example, they're not going to talk to you because they know where you are. You have to get out of there first. Now, that doesn't mean you have to drop out of life and join some cult somewhere up in the mountains. It more likely means just look for the hints that sort of remind you of what you are, where you came from, where your origins are. Some may be lucky and they may talk to you directly, right in your consciousness, through telepathy. But most of the ancestors I know of only want you to learn through a natural flow through your psyche and not tell you what to do, because that doesn't really work, because that's how the matrix works. They want you to develop your own will, because that's probably one of the reasons you're here for. Not the will of ego, but your own will, your ancestors' will, what you are. And again, I'll say this over and over, everybody on the other side of the matrix are the most loving, most beautiful beings, no matter what culture they come from. They're just different, and it's endless on how beautiful and diverse it is. It's funny that the matrix is using that kind of diversity in order to push a political agenda that has nothing to do with the ancestors on the other side. It only has to do with the inferno. So as you meditate, as you pray, as you take a walk through nature, as you turn on the radio to listen to music, see if you can pick up what your ancestors are trying to tell you. And of course, you could always talk to them within your consciousness. Just when you're thinking, ask if they're there. Maybe they'll give you some hint that they are. The need for meditation and prayer would become less and less the closer you get to them. But again, It's going to depend on the individual. Having said that, I see a lot of the ancestors reminding their loved ones of the old ways that were closer to nature, that were closer to the natural flow of the human psyche. And these are the things you're going to want to look out for. So I hope this video helps. If you have any specific questions on a technique or some other hint you might be getting, please leave it in the comments section below, and I'd be happy to answer the best I can. It is a pleasure and a joy to talk to a couple of people who are now getting much closer to their ancestors, and they're beginning to see the same thing that I see. And it's really nice to know that there are more and more people out there who are moving away from the crap of the Matrix and closer to things that are much more important than anything that the deep state or the corrupt politicians are pushing. I suspect those individuals who I had talked to about this are going to someday be very helpful for those who need help in moving closer to their ancestors and their old ways. In other words, they will become healers themselves because they will have first-hand experience within the Matrix, as well as have a deep understanding of their ways of their ancestors. One specific technique I can mention while we're on the subject is called kan no renshu in Japanese. Kan no renshu means the practice of fine-tuning your intuitive or empathic skills. This is used in martial arts a lot in order to intuitively guess what your opponent is going to do and react accordingly. However, this also can be used to feel out your ancestors, ghosts, or other paranormal entities within the area. To this day, I still use this technique. However, my ancestors do contact me directly from time to time. The way to practice this, if you're not doing martial arts, yoga, or any of these other spiritual practices, is to simply slow down your breathing, relax, and try to feel out your surroundings. As you breathe slowly, you may want to close your eyes to put yourself in a meditative state, but you can do this while being active with your eyes open. Admittedly, this takes a lot of practice, years of practice, but the more you do practice, the more you can pick up not only on your ancestors, but other things like a baby's souls. Their energies are always full of negative fields, and therefore I can't even be around them for any length of time. This is usually simply because there's some demonic being that they're playing with in order to control others. Loving beings, on the other hand, are a joy to be around, as their energy fields are always glowing. And this includes the rainbow children and all of the other people who are not here to struggle against the good versus evil game. Well, that's all I have for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, again, especially on specific techniques, please leave it in the comments section below. And thanks again for watching.